say a few words, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tim Wood, who's written a little eulogy of sorts. So I just want to say that Gary was a very close friend of mine. I first met him in 1999 when the Jefferson State Insulator Club was formed on my front porch in Medford. And we all drew lots to see who was going to be member number 1. And Gary drew the lucky number. So Gary is number 1 in our club. So we're going to retire that number. So Gary and I, we spent a lot of time together. You know, he was into gold mining. He was quite the prospector, and he always knew he was going to hit the motor load. And his enthusiasm never waned. The thing about Gary that I remember is he was always ready to greet with a smile. You know, I never saw him in a down and out dour mood. He was, you know, just always happy to see you. He was one of the most generous people I know. He really epitomized the kind of people who are in this wonderful hobby that brings us all together. So, Gary, it's been great to know. We're all going to miss him. And I'm going to turn it over to Tim at this point.
Gary's almost actually handsome.
This is Tim Woods. Tim Woods is going to deliver the eulogy.
A couple of months ago, Scott emailed me and asked if I would say something to me, and so of course I would. And I had it in my mind that I would wait until today got closer and look up a couple of scriptures from my Bible, say a couple of really impacting things, you know. And so I just kind of put the whole idea to rest until this day should get closer. One night, I was awakened from a very sound sleep, and it was not the kind of roll over and say, oh, it's still dark, I'll just go back to sleep kind of thing. It was, bam, I'm awake, now what do I do? 2 o'clock in the morning. And I will say this has happened to me before in a different context, but my mind filled up with some things I wanted to say, and on subsequent nights I woke up and filled in the details. And then one day I just sat down and wrote it down. So I'm sure it could be more well written. So forgive my inabilities, and this is what I had to say. Many years ago there was a show. No one can seem to remember exactly when the show began, but it was then and remains today the only show of its kind. Although we love to give shows names like the Rotary Roundup, or Springfield, or the Portland National, this particular show has always been known simply as the show. One day a woman appeared at the show with a young boy. He did not want to be there. In fact, he came kicking and screaming as his mother pushed him through the door and into the show hall. The ruckus of arriving got them noticed very quickly, and a kindly man sporting a huge grin hurried to greet them. I'm the show host, he said. What's all this fuss about? Come on in and enjoy the show. More than a little embarrassed, the mother said, this is my son, Gary. I would like to leave him here if I could while I attend to a few things. I think when he settles down, he will really enjoy your show. Would that be okay, sir? Smiling broadly, the show host replied, of course it would be okay. I know Gary will have a great time here because we have stuff that he will never have another opportunity to see. Come with me, young man, and I will show you around. The show host led Gary through the spacious hall to a single table in an open area. This is my table, and I am always here. There are a few rules I want to tell you about so that you know how we do things here at the show. By now, Gary had settled down and was in awe at the size of the room and the many tables that stretched on endlessly. The show host continued, are you listening, Gary? Gary nodded silently, and the host continued, okay. Reaching under his table, the host pulled out a box and taking a felt marker, wrote Gary on its side. This will be your box for the whole show. You are free to wander about anywhere in the hall you want and look at all the wonderful things we have displayed here. Each item has a tag or sticker on it with a short explanation of what the item is or its use or importance. When you find an item you want to keep, bring it up to my table and place it in your box. The box is divided so that you can place the items in it without damaging other items you have collected. At the end of the show, we will settle up. Do you understand? For the first time, Gary felt at ease and spoke. This place is so big, and there are so many people, and so many tables, and so many neat things, and so, whoa, young man, the show host laughed. You can go anywhere in the hall to any of the tables, and people are willing to help you with any questions you might have about what is on display. And remember, I am watching you, and I'm here for anything you might need. Now go on and see what you can find. Remember to look everywhere, even under tables and behind things. There are many treasures just waiting to be found. Hurrying off to see the wonders of the show, Gary yelled back over his shoulder, "Thanks, mister." Throughout the day, Gary visited table after table. Remembering what the show host had told him, he turned things upside down, moved them around, peered into boxes, and scoured every inch of each table he visited. Frequently, he clasped an item to his belly and walked, half ran back to the show host's table to carefully place the chosen item into his box. On and on it went, and still there were more tables, more incredible things, more questions to ask, and more items in his box. After finding one particularly beautiful treasure, Gary held it tightly and whirled around to race back to his box to carefully secure it. Unaware that someone was standing behind him, he fell full force into the show host. Delightedly, the show host laughed. "Gary, I've been watching you today. You are really enjoying this, aren't you?" "Boy, this is fun," Gary beamed, "and I'm just getting started." "Well, young man, it is getting late," the show host said somewhat soberly. "I think we should go see what you've collected." Reluctantly, Gary muttered, "Okay." They walked back to the host's table where all the treasures Gary had found were stored. "Would you help me lift this box of yours onto the table, Gary?" the show host asked. Together they carefully lifted it and placed it where it would be an easy view, where it would be easy to view the contents. "Now let's see what you have spent all this time collecting." The host mused. "This is some interesting stuff. There are a few commons here, but I can see a lot of really neat things. You have a great range of interests and quite an eye for the unusual. Let's see here." Pulling the pieces from their places in the box, the show host read from the label on each one. Logging, hunting, sci-fi stories, dump digging, old bottles, mushroom picking. Laughing, the host said, "Could you be an outdoors guy?" Noting the host's interest and obvious delight with his selections, Gary replied, "I love to be outside, and I like finding things, especially things that someone threw away, that are perfectly good and interesting, and they don't make anymore and have cool colors and different shapes." And Gary, the host interrupted, "Catch your breath." Smiling sheepishly, Gary said, "It's just that all this stuff is so neat, and there is so much of it, and I haven't even been to all the tables, and I saw something I just had to have, and Gary?" "Oops, I did it again, didn't I?" Gary murmured. "It's okay, Gary, I love your enthusiasm. Let's get back to your box. We are coming to a couple of really great pieces." Struggling, the show host lifted a large, cumbersome piece from the box. "This is a real load," the host exclaimed. "I know," Gary nodded. "I kind of hurt my back bringing that one up to your table." The host read the label. "The railroad," it said. What a wonderful and exciting thing, the railroad. Many people share your interest in this one. Carefully, he placed it back into the box. Next, an unusual piece, obviously glass, was lifted from Gary's box of items. "You have discovered insulators, huh?" You know, these come in a lot of different shapes and sizes, and colors can be quite stunning, the host said. I saw lots of them on the tables, and this little one caught my eye. I think I would like to get a whole bunch of different ones in different colors. That is a good one to collect, the host said. The man who wrote the book on insulators calls it a CD-120. You know quite a bit about these things, Gary said. Well, I used to shoot these with lightning bolt. Well, never mind, the host said, his voice trailing off. Anyway, you made a very nice and interesting choice with insulators, Gary. Reaching into the box, the show host looked at Gary and asked, where did you find this one? These pieces are extremely rare, and because of that, they are very valuable. Gary beamed. I think that's the only one at the show. I looked for more, but this was the only one I could find. Almost everyone would like to have one of these, the show host said as he admired the glowing yellow color. Would you believe that people have actually killed to acquire one? These pieces are out there, but they're very few and far between. The label read, gold. Well, that's about it, I guess, the host said. What a great assortment. Wait a second, Gary almost yelled. You missed the best one. He reached into the box and removed the treasure and clasped it close to his heart. Softly he spoke. I love this one more than all the others. He carefully handed it to the show host. Ah, yes, the host replied tenderly. I love this one too. Even more than you do, Gary. It is truly unique, the only one of its kind. Turning it over, he read the single word printed on the label. It said, Mindy. Carefully and silently, they both looked at the contents of Gary's box of treasures. Then Gary spoke expectantly. There are still a couple of empty spaces left in my box. If I could just have 5 more minutes, yeah, 10 tops. I know I could find something to fill the box. Looking up, Gary saw the show host shaking his head. Although he was smiling, tears brimmed up in his eyes, and one broke free to run down his face as he said, almost in a whisper, son, it's time for you to go home. Gary Michener was born September 4th, 1952. He passed away on September 3rd, 2012.